So I engage in a lot of self-directed learning and self-development as a way of kind of improving my understanding of and I guess interaction within the world, particularly as it pertains to making me a better change maker. And I've been thinking about a set of kind of like skills to develop that kind of help us across all aspects of our life. And this is this idea of kind of building your sensory perception. And this first started when I started a commonplacing project. I started a Commonplace book called My Five Senses book. And basically this book is an exploration of the five physical senses. And I've got this sensory bucket list where I'm kind of doing all of these different activities and things to really kind of tap into and connect better with my five senses. Now, the reason I kind of started this project was because I came off my antidepressants after like 7 years of being on them. I'm not advocating that like anybody do this. Obviously, consult your medical team, a medical professional, but this was a decision that I kind of had been thinking about for a while, and we decided that the best time to do it would be after my PhD because there was no way I wanted to get sucked into a deep depression or spiral out of control with my anxiety or my OCD when I also needed to finish one of the most stressful projects I've ever worked on. So we decided that after the PhD would be the best time to do that. And something that I personally wanted to do was kind of get better at tapping into my emotions and my senses, learning to kind of trust my senses a little bit deeper. So I started a five senses commonplace book, and it's been really fun to kind of like explore the five physical senses, because this is how we engage with the world. Our sense of like sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. I listened to a great book. It was by Gretchen Rubin. I can't remember what it was called. Life in Five Senses. And that was a really great book, so I definitely recommend that one. I'll leave it linked below. And I also started a commonplace book for kind of an exploration of human emotions, both my own emotions and just understanding emotions better. I have been training as an actor now for the past 12 months or so. I started screen acting training, and I've been doing a lot of self-directed learning and training. And one of the things I want to understand better so that I can be a better actor is how emotions work, how we express emotions, the kind of nuances behind the ways in which we express emotions in different contexts, just to kind of develop my craft a little bit better. And then it kind of got me thinking about the different types of senses. And I was teaching a series of workshops last year about mindfulness for change makers. And I look at kind of mindfulness across 4 planes of being. So we started off by looking at mindfulness in terms of our psychosocial dimensions, so our internal personality. We looked at mindfulness physically, so mindfulness of our body and our physical environment, mindfulness in terms of the social structures in which we exist, politically, economically, culturally, and also mindfulness in terms of our interpersonal relationships. And a big part of the lesson that I ran looking at physical mindfulness was this idea of our sensory perception as kind of being this feedback loop where we have an input, our body perceives that input, then there is a period of processing where we process it cognitively, physically, however it might be, emotionally, mentally. We process the thing that we've perceived, and then there's some kind of output. We think something, we feel something, we do something. Our body makes some kind of physiological change in response to the perception that we've made. And so it kind of got me thinking about how different types of senses are at play in these processes. And I was looking into the different types of senses, and there are kind of 4 main categories of senses. And I kind of just wanted to share these with you and get you kind of thinking about how you could work to develop these senses. I think the reason this is such a valuable thing to pursue if you are pursuing the path of the polymath is because we are constantly engaged in these perception loops, these like positive feedback loops. And they shape the way that we interact with and engage with the world. So when you can develop your senses, the kind of gap between that initial input and your perception of it is going to be so much more developed and refined. If you've developed your five senses, you're going to be so much more attuned to physical inputs and changes around you. If you've developed your mental senses, you're going to be so much more able to kind of respond to any inputs through kind of more developed or more kind of intentional cognitive processes. If you've developed your emotional senses, you're going to be so much more in tune with how you react or respond to those inputs. And so I think these are really valuable. And so the four types of senses are our physical senses, our mental senses, our emotional senses, and also our spiritual senses. Our physical senses are things like sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And we can work to heighten these physical senses in different ways. You can engage in activities that kind of heighten your sensory awareness. This could be anything from just mindful eating to listening to music, or even practicing something like yoga that's focused on that mind-body connection. Explore environments that are rich in things that are going to kind of stimulate you in terms of your senses. So things like art galleries, nature trails, or a bustling new city. You could experiment with new forms of sensory input, such as learning a musical instrument or doing kind of tastings or exploring cuisine from different cultures. Heightened physical awareness is great for polymaths because it can actually help us to reveal patterns and insights in fields like art or design or biology or even engineering. So our mental senses include any of our cognitive faculties that enable things like memory, retention, abstract thinking, our intuition, and things like reasoning. So these are really important because they allow us to interpret data, to make sense of things that we're observing, and they also allow us to draw connections and envision future possibilities. So we can kind of develop these senses by practicing critical thinking, by questioning assumptions or evaluating arguments. We can engage in interdisciplinary learning to uncover how different fields approach similar problems. We can use tools like mind mapping, journaling, or brainstorming to kind of organize and synthesize our ideas. And we can cultivate a sense of curiosity by exploring topics that are out of our comfort zone. This is really important for polymaths because strengthening our mental senses can foster innovative problem solving and the ability for us to conceptualize complex systems or theories. Our emotional senses are really what enable us to connect with our own emotions, but also those of others. This is really important for developing empathy and understanding towards others, and also connecting with them on deeper levels. So we can develop our emotional senses by practicing active listening to better understand other people's perspectives, reflecting on our own emotional responses through practices like journaling or meditation, engaging in collaborative projects that require emotional intelligence, so things like team building or mentoring, and reading literature or watching films that allow us to explore diverse emotional experiences. Emotional attunement is going to enrich our creativity, enhance communication, and support more collaborative opportunities for innovation. Our spiritual senses are what allow us to tap into a sense of purpose, to find meaning, and to also make sense of interconnections between things. So this is really important for us to engage in the world in a more meaningful way and to find inspiration beyond the material realm. So we can develop our spiritual senses by engaging in practices that maybe foster mindfulness or even transcendence, so things like meditation, prayer, or nature immersion. We can reflect on existential questions and align our work with broader values or ethical principles. We could explore philosophies, religions, or spiritual traditions to gain diverse perspectives on meaning and purpose, and seek more awe-inspiring experiences, things like observing natural wonders or studying the cosmos. Cultivating our spiritual senses is what's going to allow us to foster ethical decision-making, more visionary thinking, and just a general deeper connection to the human experience. In terms of how you can kind of work to develop your senses. I think a really great thing to do is to start a sensory bucket list and explore your 5 physical senses. I love working through things in my sensory bucket list, and some of them are like big, exciting things. Some of them are just like small little things. So I've been really getting into wine appreciation for my sense of taste. Something on my sensory bucket list that I'm yet to do is I really want to go to like a big light show, one of those like immersive experiences. That's on my sight bucket list. I did like an apple tasting with my sister, like something so, it seems so silly, but I went and I bought one of every kind of apple that they sold at my local supermarket, and we did like a blind apple tasting. So we reviewed like the texture, the flavor, everything, and we like decided which of the 7 or 8 types of apples were our favorite apples. Just little things like that, I think, that are really fun, and they can kind of like help you to like build your 5 physical senses. So there's no real like hard and fast rules about how to go about this, but I just thought that was like a really interesting thing to kind of begin to think about. I think that when we think about the work that we might be doing to cultivate a polymathic life, a lot of the focus tends to be on building our knowledge in terms of like broad academic disciplines, and also building our skills, kind of developing a level of mastery for specific skills that we might consider to be like hard or soft skills. But I think that building our sensory perception is something that's really overlooked, and something that can bring a lot of value to the work that we do, the lives that we're living, and how we just engage with the world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. If you have any suggestions or ideas or things that you want to do, definitely let me know in the comments. Feel free to check out the blog post accompanying this on my Substack. And if you are interested in topics about living a more polymathic lifestyle, engaging in self-directed learning, and kind of the intersection of self-development for wider social change, definitely check out my Purposeful Polymath playlist and some of the other videos on my channel.